Progcast. So, yeah, Manuel and I have done this like once before where we talked about Sleep Token, even though what's that I hear? Manuel, do you hear that? It's all the angry old metalheads saying that Sleep Token isn't used. Anyway, so we did that a while ago. It was fun. We thought we'd try making this a regular thing. We'd call it the Progcast. Progcast. I'm Yusuf. Boys, introduce yourself.
I'm Manuel.
I am Brendan.
And we're going to talk about... Manuel, what are we talking about? What nerdy thing are we talking about today?
Yeah, so today we are talking about Tesseract's War of Being. And fair disclaimer, I am obsessed with this band, and I'm probably not ever going to say anything bad about them, so interpret that as you will.
Exactly.
I mean, you do you, King.
Yeah, exactly. You do you, man. What can I say? Yeah, so at least like personally, I've never been like the biggest Tesseract fan, but I do like some of their stuff. And then Manuel texted me one day and said, "Hey, let's go see Tesseract." And I was like, "Ooh." And it was fun. That was a fun show in New York.
That was it was the hardest set I've ever seen them play, and
yeah.
possibly the tightest I've ever seen them play. It was crazy.
Yeah, it's gotten to a point, like we Manuel and I have talked about this before, but like metal has gotten to a point where like it is nuts just how tight players are nowadays, and I all the credit in the world, man. I sit in a practice room for multiple hours and just do that. All right, so I have a recording up. I guess we can play a bit, talk about it. Let's do like the first minute or something, Manuel, if you want to do that.
Yeah, let's do it.
So we do it. Alrighty, let's go to...
Let's tell me on this music. I mean, the body and mind is ready for this.
We're going to stop there for a second, even though those sultry vocals come in.
Yep.
I don't know. What you guys got like first reactions to hearing something like that, other than I know like Manuel, you've got like
the first
nerd stuff.
I was in a car when I heard this song for the first time. They just dropped the single. I was in the car with a friend of ours, and we're like, "Oh, we got to listen to the new Tesseract single." I had to pull over because of that first riff. It goes so hard.
It does. It really, really does. Brendan, any thoughts?
Well, here's a thought. You want to know what I know makes really good music? When you actually like hit the stream button to like listen to music and actually like hear what's going on, which is exactly what I just did to make sure I could hear it there.
Yeah.
I gotta say, like for me, I enjoy me some very heavy music. Like if you can understand what the musician is like saying, it's almost never a good thing. Because, you need to be able to hear that anger. And I've always got to remind myself there's a good place in metal for, like, clean vocals to, like, really sell it, especially when you're going a little bit more into, like, that prog area. And I'll tell you, the song is making me realize that I might need a little more Tesseract in my life, I think.
Yeah, so Tesseract, Ackle talks about this sometimes. They basically listened to Meshuggah and were like, what if we did this but Pink Floyd?
Ooh.
Yeah.
I can see what you're saying on that.
Yeah. And also, this song is like a masterclass in how to make an 11-minute long song feel like took no time at all. It starts super hard, and then it just pushes and pulls and plays with all kinds of different types of intensity, and then it gets to the ending, which I'm sure we'll talk about later.
Yeah. We're like, on that note of like pushing and pulling with like certain intensities and emotion, I think the one thing that as we kind of alluded to earlier, like it's been common with a lot of like modern prog players and everything, is there's a lot of influence from those that came before them, and for a lot of guys these days, that is Meshuggah. The problem with that stereotype, I always found, is that everyone just looks at Meshuggah and goes, "Yeah, low string go."
Low string go burr.
Yeah,
Low string go burr.
nobody's as heavy as Meshuggah, because Meshuggah realized that like having minimal elements is actually more impactful if you're trying to just be as disgusting as possible.
Exactly.
Meshuggah is a clean part, sometimes like low string go burr and then screaming and whatever the fuck Thomas Haka is doing.
I mean, Thomas Hawk can do whatever he wants. But yeah, like
Yeah.
Meshuggah understood like the beauty of minimalism in their writing, whereas I think too many players now are just going like burr and then wheedly. But for this intro, just to be brr, like, oh, it just like.
Yeah.
Well, I think for me, I always have to remember, because I get a little bit stuck in my ways when it comes to a lot of prog. Like I tend to fall into a lot of the classics, like Stradivarius or like Dream Theater
or Rush.
Yeah, sometimes Rush, but for me, I'm like a big. It's like, of course, like bands that like have not had the same members ever for any long period of time. I get into a rut with certain songs. I have to remind myself, it's okay to like go to like modern music is not going to hurt you. You know what I mean? And I think there's a lot to be said for like kind of sticking in your ways when it comes to prog. Like for me, one of my favorite ways to drive my car is putting on Black Diamond by Stradivarius, and it's just like that song is such an unbelievably like well put together song. And then we go back over here to Tesseract, and it's like, you know what? This is okay. I'm allowed to step out of my cave a little bit. It's like a breath of fresh air as a song to me.
We Yusuf and I did like a 2-hour podcast on this with Ro,
with
ages ago, and the theme of that podcast, and it was the history of metal, and the theme ended up being blank ruin metal generation. You've had this horde of people who but yeah, new is not necessarily bad.
No, new is honestly like I'm definitely getting a little more picky as I get older about like the kind of new metal that comes out, which is fine. However, not about new metal, the genre famously done by bands such as Linkin Park and Limp Bizkit. We had to get one in.
You mean the greatest band that has ever existed?
Yeah, I don't know why people say that. Anyway, we'll talk about Limp Bizkit another day.
All right, we should get rolling.
Have you made time for Fred Durst in your life today?
No, so the other thing that really impresses me about this song and this album in general is that they're 5 albums deep now?
I think 5 or 6, right?
Yeah, and it's kind of been a journey where they started out with like what's the multi-part song, Concealing Fate.
Yep.
And then they went to the really like big brain stuff on Altered State, and then Polaris was more poppy, and then Sonder was kind of doing its own thing. This feels like they took everything they learned on that journey and then went back to Concealing Fate. This feels like Concealing Fate 2, but with all of the like sophistication that they picked up along the way. To me.
Yeah, I could agree with that. I think like at some point though, I feel like, with a lot of bands going back to a sound from the past that they were very comfortable with is a good idea. And so
I think.
Nope.
Oh no, you go ahead.
No. By all means.
Oh no, of course. I think that when you come to a lot of bands, I think it's a very tricky thing because I think a lot of bands have definitely been unable to move past certain sounds, like going a little outside of like the prog element of things. Like let's take two bands. Like you take a band like Metallica and a band like Overkill, for example. And like you look at the transitions of wildly adjusted and evolving music from like really fast and really heavy to like really dad rocky and with Metallica. And it's very difficult to say, how I feel about how it has evolved. Then if you take a band like Overkill and like a singer like Bobby Blitz, and like for me at least, you could take like Lean Green Killing Machine, I'm sorry, and take it back to some of their older stuff, and it's a very, very similar in nature composition. And it's I think a very interesting idea in itself and could be a video all of its own in terms of arguing consistency with the sound. Like for it's I think it's different for every like act. You know what I mean? Where like it depends greatly on what works for them and like what's going to be good. Like do certain bands want to remain the same versus a band that really wants to really push the boundaries of what it is to be that band. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I mean, prog is all about pushing boundaries, but it's also like I always hear people being like, "Oh, you got to find, you got to do something new, you got to do something different." But there's so many people who are just doing random nonsense because they think they have to be different, and it doesn't like they don't really want to. They just want to like sound like their favorite band, and there's nothing wrong with that. But yeah, evolving. Like I like it when bands evolve for a reason.
Yeah.
I think a very common reason, especially with like older bands, especially like in the prog space, that reason typically is we've been doing this for like 40 years and
Yeah,
my
and we're bored.
fingers are tired. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Like you cannot
yeah,
play the same sweeping arpeggios that you did when you were 20 years old, when you're like 50 or 60 years old, because your fingers are just not going to do that anymore. And I think that's an X factor that's long overlooked, especially if you're like this grumpy old ponytail wielding bald on the top of your head old dude who
mhm.
remembers what it was like in the
Mm.
70s and like somebody's basement listening to a whole bunch of like really eclectic vinyls and whatnot.
Right.
Yeah.
It all depends on the
Hmm.
person. I think the other thing too is like, you look at bands that have sort of popped off in the last, I don't know, like 10 years now. It's 2024, so at this point I think I can say 10 years, like since 2014, 2015. That started off a certain way and like either changed their sound in a way that's either been different or even drastic. And I think a very good example, Manuel, is Polyphia.
Yeah.
How
Ooh.
they are,
Whether or not you like it, they have changed everything about themselves several times.
yeah, and they've gotten to a point now where they're sticking to what they've sort of changed themselves to, and they're
Mhm.
making it work. The thing is, we as listeners just have to accept it, whether we like it or not. That this is how the road has gone for them, and this is how things have changed. Whether you like
Yeah,
trap metal or not, but yeah,
that's also the flip side of that. Like, you know, people will complain. People complain. Metalheads like to complain.
oh yeah,
That's the metalhead
What?
thing.
they do.
Uh,
What?
it's
Let me
like,
be a
oh,
gay
you
for a
did
moment.
this is different. I don't like it. This sounds the same. I don't like it.
Well,
But
I make the argument for consistency with one word, and that word to me is psycho stick. That's all I'm going to say. Like, I'm
yeah,
sorry.
fair.
Like, if you listen to some of their earlier stuff, and then you listen to like, first off, I have a tremendous respect for Psycho Stick because during COVID they did all those free concerts on Facebook, so people could like
Hmm.
jam out with
Mm-hmm.
their music. But like, those are some hardworking musicians who take an idea and they keep that idea, have kept that idea alive, and have maintained a very rock solid consistency with little to no changes in that lineup. And that's an admirable trait. And I respect that. I respect the commitment to their whole entire way of doing things.
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of it. Like we were just talking about Dragon Force. Dragon Force hasn't changed a bit for like more than a decade, and it's still fun to listen to.
I
So
agree with that statement.
yeah, Sabaton also. Sabaton does one thing, you know exactly what you're getting when you get a Sabaton record, and that's exactly what you wanted that day.
I feel like you have to be the Sabaton guy though, because like I think especially with their album, The Great War, like there is a very specific song about the Red Baron, and they definitely
Yeah,
had a goodly few recycled ideas in that song. I don't remember exactly the song
it's
that they
the song is the Red Baron,
Yeah.
the Punk Shuffle. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, well,
yeah,
I definitely should have known that name coming.
yeah.
That one.
It's fine. They forget too.
um. So anyway, do we want to get back to
Yeah.
War PA?
Let's get back to war. Let's get back to another song that has war in its name. That
I
Yeah.
like war. Let's
people
do it.
people like war.
My tears turn to dread with words of life and death. I was sold alive. My future in disguise.
I just love how beefy the drums are here.
Oh
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
yeah, I was literally just giving that like ooh kind of vibe in my brain. That scratch at the inside of my head very nicely. And this music video was really doing it for me too.
Yeah, they went kind of all out with it. I think they also like kickstarted a VR game for this album and stuff like that. They kind of went all out on.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Man, I want to be Echo when I grow up.
I know, right?
He says,
Amos.
staring uncomfortably down the barrel of 30.
I want to play bass like Amos. Stairs.
Oh man.
I will say though, on the topic of the fact that they have like a VR game that they're kickstarting based on like the album and the video.
Mhm.
Honestly, one thing I gotta give credit to a lot of you see this a lot with the modern prog guys is they're finding different avenues to market themselves and market the things they do, because we all understand as metal musicians we don't make a lot of fucking money.
Yep. And it's also like just the reality of it is that album sales don't pay the bills, and touring is paying less and less of the bills as time goes on
Getting worse and worse
because of
with
the merch
everything,
cuts and the
But don't even get started with like streaming too. Like getting anything streamed and making like a solid profit off of that, that's a nightmare these days.
Yeah.
I think the numbers like you gotta average what is it like 100,000 monthly viewers or something, or monthly listeners or something like that on Spotify to even make like a few bucks. I don't know.
Basically, I mean they pay like 0.002 cents a stream or something like that. It's not. Yeah.
So for for Tesseract to start being like we're making a VR game, or
Mhm.
Misha Mansour and Ella's eccentric business ventures.
Well, that's how a lot of metal bands work now. Is that
Yeah.
the band itself is almost just a business card for like the band's various businesses,
Yeah,
which is fine.
I mean, if you go back in time, like you look at a band like Iron Maiden and Bruce Dickinson, how many jobs does that dude like have? Like commercial pilot, winemaking guy,
He's like, he does
owns a
everything.
vineyard.
Yeah.
Like I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure if you digged enough, he'd be like some kind of pirate. I don't know. He's got 50,000 other jobs in there. And I mean, that's just with a band like Iron Maiden. I mean, yes, he can afford those types of ventures, but like
Mhm.
you can't just be one thing in metal.
Mhm.
You have to be able to diversify what you're doing, or you're going to be hungry for a while, and it's just not going to be any good. You can't.
Yeah.
It's not the '80s anymore. You can't really just
Yep.
be like you can't just be the metal guy unless you really truly have stumbled upon something where you can really just support yourself doing it forever.
Yeah, but I guess
Yeah.
even then though, like the idea of being just the metal guy, quote unquote, and sticking yourself to one like basket and going from there, those are becoming far and more like sparse each day. They're dwindling.
Mhm.
It's not as easy as it was 10 years ago, 15 years ago to be just like the metal guy. You kind of got to be doing like other things.
Yeah.
Now.
I think it's a
Yeah, well, and even
oversaturation too.
It's oversaturation. It's also the fact that the all the social media algorithms, sometime around 2015, they got retuned away from showing people content they wanted to see towards just making as much money as possible. So, I was talking to Jake Lowe a while ago from the Pliny band, and he was like, "Yeah, I got big on Facebook just by posting videos of myself playing, and that doesn't happen anymore."
I mean, like Steven Taranto, another really good example.
Yeah.
He he's so well known now, but like he started as just a dude playing guitar in his room in Australia.
Mhm.
Right? Like, yeah, it doesn't. Social media doesn't really work as well as it used to. I mean, TikTok's a thing. That's the thing. You go viral on TikTok. Congratulations.
Yep.
You certain things work and certain things don't. But like sticking yourself to one thing as a genre, especially in metal.
I mean, that's
It's
what
difficult.
having like 10 other like side projects for, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And also to all the like metal guys or like kids who are dreaming of being a rock star in their basement, all of these guys have day jobs for a long time.
Yeah. They
Like,
all have day jobs.
that's
They all do something. What? Like Manuel and I.
I mean, heck, Dan Tompkins from Tesseract left the band for years to go be a cop and make some money, right?
Did he really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Wow. Huh. Policing too. Damn, that's a whole
That's wild.
commitment by itself. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, like.
Yeah, they have a song on the first album about some of his experiences as a police officer. It's kind of messed up.
Yeah. The more you know.
April,
Oh,
if you know that song.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like there's something. I think Manuel and I have talked about this before, but there was a quote that a colleague of mine gave me when I was in school. Of, if you want to be, what is it? If you want to be a musician, start playing gigs every night, and if you want to be an artist, get a day job. And I kind of see that more and more, where a lot of these like big bands that have popped off, they have day jobs of something else because you gotta make money somehow to support your band. I mean, look at like Protest the Hero is a great example. Their guitar players have their own publishing company to support everything for the band, right? Like Sheet Happens Publishing funded the last 2 tours they did. So, you got to do something.
I mean, even before the podcast, we were talking about that article we found about aborted bassist going into a PhD.
Yep.
Like, he's like, you know what? I'm having fun, but I need to do things for security, so I'm just going to go into academia.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
my plan.
I mean, thank you, scientist.
Their vocalist just left because he had a kid.
Yep. And then, I mean, that happens. It's funny. Metal bassists going into like science fields is not rare.
Yeah.
The former bass player of Monuments recently left to go do, I think, water science or something like that. He has a lab. I don't know.
A water science lab.
Yeah.
Do you
But,
mean a dam?
No, I don't mean a dam.
Are you
Dam,
sure?
dog.
Imagine if you had your own dam.
It's a dam. That's what it is now.
A dam.
That's
It's a dam, okay?
That's the headcanon.
Yeah.
Like, he's got like test tubes, and like his assistant's going to be a beaver, and it's going to come up and say, "Doctor, what are you doing in here?" He slams the beakers off the table. It's water science, damn it!
But let's talk a bit about the kind of the way this song is structured. And I want to get to the ending. So the thing, one of the big things about the song for me is that it never comes to a resting point until the very end.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll see what I mean when we get there. It lets the air out, so it starts with that really nasty that riff, which I think is just diminished scale, super unstable. And then it has the kind of epic drums thing, and then it's going to go into some stuff with like the classic Tesseract funky bass stuff and all the weird riffs that they do. But it never never rests until the big epic ending.
Yeah.
And then the other thing about it is that, I mean, it's part of the secret of making songs this long, the thematic development. So there'll be they'll hint at little scraps of thing. There's one line, "Tear the mask away," that they start. It starts out as like a little background thing, and then it grows into the chorus, which is super super cool.
Yeah. There's a lot of like really weird like tips and like little neat things that go on in this song that like we'll keep going here. We're only at like the 2-minute mark. We've still got 9 minutes of this thing to go.
And we already brought up Limp Bizkit. Yeah.
I know, yeah, exactly. We already brought up Limp Bizkit. Show's over.
Yeah, that should have been the end.
That should have been it. I'm gonna
see what I mean. That riff is just Concealing Fate.
This riff makes me lose my mind.
It
is Concealing Fate.
It sounds like something off because
It I'm gonna just bring it back for a second. Like I was re-listening to this song last night to just get like my thoughts ready, and every time this riff hits, I'm just like, it's so simple, yet I want to go like punch people.
Mm-hmm.
Like it just.
But I think
something in there.
I think what's really good about this, especially as like a prog song, is that really, in my summation, a good prog anything does not let you get comfortable ever. Like it's not letting me get adjusted to it, and that's excellent. It's challenging me to go through these peaks and these valleys and these different textures of sound. And it's just this. Mm-hmm. Oh, it's just this great ride.
And what it is doing is it's inviting you to just like live in its world for 11 minutes. Yeah. It's because it is also so atmospheric.
Mm-hmm. It's demanding to be heard as what it is, and it's not trying to be something it's not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's very like there's no like as you were pertaining to Brendan, there's no space for a break, which I always appreciate in songs that like, sometimes it's just you just gotta slug it through. But with this, it's like, oh yeah, you're enjoying the peaks and valleys of it. You're enjoying the whole adventure that this thing is bringing you on, and it's just a constant like, okay, where am I going? Like, what's gonna happen next? The road's in front of you. The road is still there. Like nothing disappears. It doesn't like nothing deviates or nothing disappears, but it just branches off somewhere that you're like, how the fuck did I end up in here?
We're here. We got here somehow. We fell in. Yep. I'm into it.
Exactly.
I don't know how we got here, but we're here, and we're enjoying the crap out of it.
Oh yeah. All right, let's keep going with it, shall we?
Please.
That is a whole minute.
Yeah. Oh, so right off the bat, the thing I really love is just how slammy the riffs are, and it's the thing I was like, okay, he's really gonna get to a point of the song where it's like, okay, what's gonna happen next? But the thing I really like about this track is that they layer in that nice, like, serene background kind of like not vocalization, but that nice back. Like, oh, and it's just, you're already there and you don't even realize it. It plays a little trick in my brain. And it's like, oh, I love that. That is so cool.
That's kind of the sound that they pioneered that sets them apart from Meshuggah. Because I've actually read an interview with Amos, one of them, I don't remember. One of them, who was talking about like, oh yeah, they wanted to do Meshuggah but tonal, right? It's just kind of similar to the Meshuggah, but Pink Floyd. So they've got all these disgusting riffs with this really like slow moving, pretty stuff over the top of the of the guitars.
Yeah, I think there's things like that. When that synth comes in, it really makes me appreciate this kind of music more, because there's so much beauty in the simplicity of it that it's just that same chugging riff going over and over again. And as the synths start to like add and build up, and like Jay is doing, he's adding double kicks on the drums and adding like little things here and there. I was never a big fan of this kind of stuff until like recently, but the more I listen to this, I'm just like, I get it now. Like, it's there, I get it, I understand like what about like the components of what makes the machine great start to make sense now. Yeah.
The problem I have is that I don't get how a human brain comes up with this stuff, because I want to do that.
I know, same.
Well, I think.
Sorry, Brendan. Let me just one second.
Oh no.
Yeah.
I think we're all just having like all these ideas. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I think the thing is though, Manuel, is like, you and I've talked about this for years. This stuff, when you hear it, is like in theory, not music theory. In theory, it sounds so straightforward that we should be like, this shouldn't be too hard to write something like this. And then we try, and we tried this before, and we're just like, nope.
I mean, I learned like a 35-minute set of this music back in college, and A, it was one of the most brutal things I've ever done in my life. B, I'm never gonna underestimate this stuff ever again.
Well, I think
because I'm pretty sure we played it wrong.
I think that's ultimately what the point I was going to make, is that when you're the beautiful part about this is one could definitely say there's simplicity to it. It clearly sounds simplistic, but I think the ultimate takeaway for me is that it's a perfect example of, if you've done something right, people are not sure you've done anything at all, because in the background there are all the elements that are coming into play so perfectly precision crafted to fit together in a specific way that it just comes as this beautifully laid out tapestry of music. Like, when you look, it's like a medieval tapestry for me, where like the art style of it looks very simplistic, but when you really get into the structure of it, you can see the layering, the technique of things that really come together to make this beautiful conjunction of ideas. You never really know the work that went into it.
Yeah, honestly, precision crafted might be the best descriptor of this music I've ever heard, because there's so much, little just numbers happening, little mathematical techniques, stretching, pulling, taking little ideas and moving them around in very precise ways.
Yeah, everything's to a T. In like simplest terms, everything's to a T. Every little bit and component, every little part has its own way of moving, and Tesseract is able to, and other bands that do this kind of stuff, they're able to find ways to manipulate those parts and go, well, it does this. Could it do this too?
Yeah,
let's find out.
The T upside down and puts it right back.
Yeah. And it's something like I said earlier, I appreciate a lot more with this kind of stuff. And let's keep going.
Please.
Yeah.
You gotta love the shots of Jay just sitting there being like, yeah, I know how good I am. There it is.
Yeah.
So that becomes the chorus through a process.
Which, like, the transition into that is, like, seamless. You don't even realize it's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like, just going back to that. Even, there's... I was going to bring up something because you mentioned Jay. And have you seen his stuff with Dremio? By chance?
No.
He recently did some stuff with Dremio talking about, like, Tesseract parts and whatnot. And the way he breaks them down is so interesting because, like, they have all the transcriptions, like, they have everything written down, right? And you look at it on paper and you're like, oh, that's how it goes. Oh, I've been counting this wrong my whole life.
Yeah. No, that's what we figured out. We were trying to learn Eclipse.
Oh, right.
And that the second half of that song is absolute nonsense.
Yeah.
It's great nonsense, but you're playing it and you realize that the snare is now on the one, and you're not sure if the riff you're playing is the right one, and are you missing a note? I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. But going back to this is like it's insane, just like where it gets to take the mask away, like seamless transition into what is now the chorus.
You don't realize that was like a hinting at the chord, but that's what makes it good, because they're giving you a taste, and then they take that taste and they start pulling on it and changing it and recontextualizing it, and then when you get to the chorus, you're like, I know where that came from.
Yeah, exactly.
And it makes this whole 11 minutes not feel like it's just a bunch of stuff that got glued end to end, which is the risk when you're making a song this long.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Brendan, any thoughts? We can keep going.
Well, definitely. I think it takes a certain expertise to just really know, like, how these deeply, like, in my mind, it's like any one of these could be the introduction of a completely different song, but it takes a very specific level of craftsmanship and understanding of exactly what you're doing to know these are going to flow together exactly the way I want them to. And it's just on full display in this particular track. And I really don't know how I could even possibly cover all of it. It's just this superlatively together idea that just clicks together with difference after difference after difference.
Yeah. There's all just constant moving ideas, and it's one of those things where you never understand, even like if you're a gigantic music nerd, how much is going into this. Because you're like, oh yeah, this is there. Wait, where did that come from? How'd that get there?
If I were writing a doctoral thesis, I would probably take a bunch of Tesseract songs and try to actually figure out what is going on.
Yeah,
that sounds
because
like an exercise in punishing yourself quite a bit.
Yeah, exactly.
It probably would be.
And it's worse because they don't really have transcriptions for most of them.
Yeah.
Not publicly available ones. So I would have to figure it out by ear and then talk about it. However,
are they not?
I think it would be.
Shit Happens?
Yeah, but they've only done some stuff. I have you can get the Sonder book, or the Polaris book. No, the Polaris book. I need them to do a book for this album because I need to learn all of it. I say that now, but
then you get it and then you look at it.
Yeah, I'm like,
it'll be
nope,
the same. It'll be the same reaction we both had with the Terraformer book of going,
yeah,
this is so much harder than we thought it was.
Yeah.
All right, let's keep going because we can get to this chorus bit. wild appreciation I have, not appreciation, but like something that gets me going every time is so in these parts, right? Those hits underneath the vocals, ba ba ba, just hits there. It's just like,
Yep.
oh my god, that's so
Yep.
pretty. It's
And that
so
that
pretty.
guitar tone is just disgusting. It sounds angry at you. It
Oh.
sounds like it wants to rip your face off.
Oh, absolutely.
There's like a
Brendan?
Brennan,
oh yes, of course.
he disappeared
So
for
there's
a
like a
sec. Where'd he go?
part. Oh no, I'm here. Sorry, I think we're minor
All
connection
good,
issues.
all good.
I
Yeah.
think there's like a part where like there's just this there's very subtle like augmenting of his voice where it's just kind of front feed out a little bit. And it's just like this
Mhm.
subtle little touch that just really added this entire other layer for me to the song. Like the human brain has to like, okay, I know in my mind how I want that's exactly the song to go. And how does it you just wonder how it like I think with Manuel asked, like how does the human brain come up with some of these?
Mhm.
And it's just like you know in your mind that's like going to be a part of the song. There's a very specific transition or like this very specific augmentation to like the audio. And you wonder how you would even get to the end point of that. Like, how do
Mhm.
you even manifest that out of a human mind and not like a computer mind?
Yeah. Yeah. Everything seems so algorithmic that you're like, how a human came up with this? Like, okay.
Yep. I mean, to be fair, there's 5 of them, so
Yeah,
that
exactly. There's
that
5 of them.
probably helps.
Yeah.
But damn. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's also like they're so good at I mean that's the kind of the classic metal pitfall of just like everything happening at 11 all the time, whereas they know exactly when to pull back and just let the voice do its thing.
Mm-hmm. And it works. Like, it works. It works well in this case, and it works well
Yeah.
in general. You just have to let things breathe.
Yeah, sometimes I know the there's that classic Ingve quote of "Why is less more? More is more." But sometimes, I mean, you can see this in Meshuggah. Meshuggah, there's this video I found of some film composer doing like a really big epic orchestral layer on top of Bleed, and you know what happens? It doesn't sound as good.
Mm-hmm.
Because the whole point of Bleed is that it's absolutely relentless, and there's only one thing happening for 90% of that song.
Yeah.
And that thing is face punching.
Pretty much.
I mean, I think it's an equal part of, I think it's a combination of you have to be like, they say there's just people who are like kind of born to do these types of music. Like you have to be kind of, I think it's an equal part of like just kind of being born with that right computational thinking when it comes to putting a composition together like this, like knowing full well, but also knowing from experience when it's too much or when you really should push those boundaries. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll go on.
Oh well, and it's I always say that the guy who puts in the work is gonna outdo the natural every time until the Mozart shows up and then everyone goes home. But they've been doing the like Ackle back in the day. That was Fell Silent, right? The band that had the magical origins, mythical origin story that became Monuments and Tesseract. So they're old hands at this point.
Yeah. So it's just dedicated, bright minds, all hard work, just putting it together and creating these kinds of genuine monstrosities.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's also got to be a time when you know when to pull back on your monster. Because if you look like a performer like Jesse Leach of Killswitch Engage, like
yeah.
he's a perfectionist. Like
he is.
I remember, I think there was like a few years ago where like they actually had to release a statement like, "Look, we got to calm it down." Jesse kind of blew out his vocal cords, but he'll be back. We promise. Or like, there's got to be like he's such a hardworking perfectionist artist that there's a fine line between being able to produce something like what we're seeing here and knowing when to pull back, or knowing when you have to deliver the hammer and push beyond what you're currently working on to the point of self-destruction? And when do you call that line?
It's funny you bring up Jesse Leach of Killswitch Engage, because I was going to bring up the other, of course, notable Killswitch Engage vocalist, Howard Jones, who one of my
Howard
personal
Jones.
favorite vocalists of all time. Love him.
I mean, you
Incredible.
can't not love Howard Jones.
Right, exactly. But one thing I've realized that I appreciated and loved about Howard and his the way he performs is he knows when to calm himself down. He's an absolute terror on a microphone. But you know, one of my favorite live recordings of any band ever is the Set This World Ablaze DVD that Killswitch did live at the Worcester Palladium for I can't remember what anniversary it was, but it was right after End of Heartache came out. And like he incredible vocalist, everything about him, but he knows when to tone it down. He knows when to pull back a little bit because he's starting to hurt here and there. And you know, your comment about Jesse, I remember seeing Killswitch in I think 17 it was, when they were in Boston on tour with Anthrax, and at some point Jesse almost blew his voice out, like 2/3 into the set, just because, you know, perfectionist. He knows when he should pull back, but he chooses not to, which cool, but at the same time, like, you know, we got to be careful about these things.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's my point. I think there's something to be said when it comes to creating this type of art. And I do selectively use the word art, because just because you make something complex and something that has layers, it doesn't necessarily mean it's art. It can just be this very produced, overly saturated with like this money-making influence behind it. I think that there's something to be said, because really, I don't think you're going to find a better dichotomy of the ideas of like Jesse Leach and Howard Jones. Because when you look at Howard, like, he is a technical operator. Like, he knows exactly when and where to pull things back. But Jesse Leach, being an equivalent perfectionistic kind of deliverer of this vocal range, he chooses to push himself to the point where, you know what, I have vocal cords. Not anymore. I don't need them. Kind of need them, but they're not going to be necessary when I have a cheering audience at the end of it. But then there's the next show that you have to do, you know?
That's, I mean, Yusuf and I know this very well. It's about 70% of the performance majors at Berkeley injure themselves before they graduate.
Yeah.
Musicians don't really learn how to take care of themselves very well, most of them, and you have to learn it the hard way after the fact, half the time. I know we both have learned that lesson.
I believe that.
Yeah. I think, you know, the one thing I've become more of a stickler of as a player has been taking care of my body. Yeah, I'll go hard when I need to, but at the same time, like, if I need to take a rest, I need to take a rest. You know, like, going back to the death metal band that Manuel and I both play in, there are some days when we're recording EPs and whatever the hell else that, like, we'll track for half the day and then get a massage gun, throw a wrist brace on, and chill for like 2 hours. Yeah.
There's also to be said, beyond just like the prep work, there's also like the traveling, the falling, the everything, and then there's the sleepless nights that you put yourself through. Even when I was still doing radio, like, there was just nights where, you know, you're doing things until 3 in the morning, and then the next day you forgot that you agreed to cover somebody's new shift, and like, okay, well, now I have to do all of this for another 2 hours on like less than 3 hours of sleep, and you have to make it work. You have to like make yourself do that. And then there's other days where like you do all of that and you still have to schlep in New York because you did agree to do like some kind of interview with somebody who's performing at like the Hammerstein or whatever. And it's just this mentality that you have to keep in mind with it, where you can't just allow yourself to work yourself to the point where you're going to die. You need to allow yourself. I think that goes for anyone, like whether or not you're creating these mathematically, technically excellent prog songs, or you're just going out to, maybe even just for yourself, if you're just going to like a show, you have to remember that there's never going to be an end point to music of this caliber. It's always going to be something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So be nice to you.
Yeah, exactly. Be nice to yourself. Is
Be nice to you, y'all.
You gotta keep trucking. You gotta keep trucking. Speaking of keeping trucking, let's keep trucking.
Let's roll it.
Let's roll it.
The visuals of this video are so pretty.
There's some. I saw some clips of it's all mocap
Oh, is it really?
stuff. Yeah,
Oh,
or like a lot of it is at least.
yeah.
So you feel how like they've pulled back,
Yeah, but it's still.
but it's still driving.
Still moving forward, but they're starting to.
It hasn't come to a resting point at any moment.
No.
Come to a low, not really a rest.
Yeah.
Yeah. That choir in the background.
Yeah.
And then there's that like really choppy synth that's keeping the motion
Yeah.
steady. Yeah.
I almost feel like the guitar is purposely trying to mislead you on what's going to happen next.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Stop it here because this is where they introduce the theme that will eventually become the finale.
Yeah.
Except the way they introduce it is this moment of just drifting. Right, everything falls away except for the really pretty clean stuff and the voice, and then that's going to grow into this big epic ending.
Yeah, it like I'm excited for when that hits because that's always fun. It's just like what Brendan was talking about in regards to the guitars being like misleading is something I love to hear because you're thinking about it a certain way and then you realize, wait, that's not how it's not how it's supposed to sound, right? There's this old, I guess it applies more to other genres of metal, but Manuel, I don't know if our dear old professor, who's not that old, David Marvuglio, ever told you or ever talked to you guys about this in Ensemble of the way you hear how like the pulse works, right? So one thing he always talked about with us when we were doing protest ensemble was, are you hearing it like this, or are you hearing it static like, or are you hearing it like a third way that just like the rest of the band is not hearing it in? And we're like, oh, we never actually thought of that. And in cases like this, you're hearing the guitars and goes, oh, okay, it's sounding like this. And you know what Jay's doing on the drums, you're like, oh, okay. And then they switch, and you're like, oh, never fucking mind.
Yeah, that's also kind of the Meshuggah legacy where it's all these cycles. Tesseract does it a bit differently. I've actually like figured out a few of the techniques they use, but where it's all these kind of mutually prime numbers that are all cycling around each other.
I think for me, like listening to the way the guitar is put together in this track, for this section of it, like sometimes when I hear a song, I almost visualize it like a person doing something, and for me, it's almost like it's like some kind of inside boxer trying to evade, trying to throw you off on exactly what it's going to do next before it hits you with something really hard. And I feel like
I actually feel like the guitar tone itself really reinforces that because I've always felt like the one signature, well, not the one, but one of the really signature things about Tesseract is that the guitars sound like they really don't want to exist. Like they're kind of sucking in on themselves. Which really, really reinforces that feeling.
Or maybe that they're trying to wrangle something back in, like it's trying to escape and it wants to force it into submission.
Yeah.
That's an interesting way of thinking about it, actually. Oh. Yeah,
I'm
see,
an interesting kind of guy.
there you go. And see, I think that goes into the point of like, there's so many ways we can hear things and how we interpret what exactly how that part works in coordination with everything else going on. Like, okay, so what's going on here? What's it supposed to do? Is it trying to conceal everything? Is it trying to like sort of just slowly break a door open? Like, things like that. Let's keep going.
Well, and you've also got that really stable, choppy synth. It's
Yeah.
just 16th notes. It's
Yeah.
just consistent, and then everything else is sort of dancing around that,
Yep.
and obscuring that. But you still got this kind of pillar of stability sitting there in the middle for you.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, let's keep going. We got like
Please,
two more
thank
songs
you.
to two more songs. No, two
Two
more.
more. Oh God, no.
Oh God, no.
We will not survive.
That you might not have found. To dream of flowing like sun crystal and open eyes glistening as you read.
Going back to what Brendan was saying earlier too, is that there's, like we've talked about, there's no real rest period in the song. What there is a low.
Yeah.
This is where that low is. It's not really a rest, but there's still.
Yeah,
still
it's
active
there's
in a way.
nothing yet to come, but it's pulling off into the distance.
Yeah.
You really have to look for it. Like, it's really
And-
making you earn it right now.
Yeah,
And then,
And then it hits
but
you.
this is earlier
Mhm.
that is now recontextualized into an epic piece of music.
Yeah.
I think this goes right into the notion of less is more as a concept, where the idea is that you go into this period of calm in the song where it's just like if the previous part was like a boxer evading, this part is you emerging from like a cave into like light rain, and it's just like this serenity for that you're not expecting. It's just this calm where one previously wasn't, and I found myself looking for the part like what's going to happen, when is the floor going to give way again? And I think the way this just goes right back to the idea that like every piece of this is so perfectly crafted to fit into the overarching narrative of the song.
Mhm.
And like this is the part where it's meant to lower your defenses a little bit. Meant to
And yeah, we're
multiple-
talking so much about like precision and craft and complexity, but this song is also deeply emotional. Like I had tears in my eyes by the end of this when they played it live.
Yeah. Yeah.
I actually found anticipation of this part because like I know something's gonna hit again. I know it's going to happen. And for me it's like, okay, when's it gonna come? I found like my body just adjusting, like, okay, you know what's going to happen next. So let's prepare ourselves. But it just wasn't coming where I thought it was going to come. And I was like, that's just fucking. I think they knew we would be looking at very specific measures of the song, and they purposely did not put them there. They knew we would be looking for them.
Yeah, and I think that's where beauty lies in this kind of music, especially when you don't know where it's going, but it's this rest period of, you're preparing your body, you're preparing for the end. You just don't know when it's going to happen, or you kind of know what. You have an idea of what's going to happen, but when it hits is when it gets you. In contrast to the last time Manuel and I did this, we were talking about The Summoning by Sleep Token, which has the wildest ending to a song I've heard in the last like 5 years.
It turns into a funky blues tune at the end.
It's like this nutty, proggy, like wild, in your face, like face punching, but also some Pink Floyd in there kind of thing. And then there's this gigantic middle of just synth where you're like, okay, is that the end of the song? And then it's just back into face punching, but it's now a very sexy blues tune. And you're like, okay, Sure. Fuck it. Cool.
Well, I think you
Yeah.
have to like accept a song for what it is. Like
Mhm.
otherwise you turn into like this like grumpy old dude who's just like, this is not what I like, and I'm just gonna make the internet hear my opinions. But I think a song is going to be what it is, and you can either accept it for what it is, and you can either embrace what it is and the kind of hidden meanings that you're looking for, or you can be like just unhappy about it. And I
Well,
think that's
some of the best music that there is will do this thing where it'll build up anticipation, and then something will happen, and that thing will be exactly what you wanted, but you didn't know what it was going to be.
Yeah.
Right? So it satisfies you, but in a surprising way.
Yeah, I think that's what I like about this. It's like I didn't know what I needed the song to be, and it's just like already done that heavy lifting for me. It's like this is exactly what it needed to be. I would never have known until just going on the journey of this track.
I think that's something that, as far as like expectations go for a song, I feel like ruins the experience for a listener when they have expectations for what the song should be in their head based on previous listening history to like a certain band. So when it takes a different direction, you kind of go, oh, maybe not. But I think not having those expectations and not going in blind almost, and just letting the journey just show you, just experiencing the journey as it goes step by step is, I think, all very important in just listening in general.
Mm-hmm. So let's wrap this up. Let's the ending of this.
The words that I whispered when it all began, did they shine a light on you? You don't understand.
So you notice now this is where everything comes to rest.
It's still very like in your face, but not aggressive.
And that is I'm screaming there.
Oh yeah.
And then it fades off into the distance. And my favorite part about this ending is that it doesn't end on the root.
No. Because nerds.
It ends on the ninth.
Does it really end on the huh.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Huh, yeah. But yeah, this song is something, man. Like,
I'm here for it.
Oh, absolutely, I'm here for it too. I think the way we're talking about rest periods and whatnot in a song, or like low periods and ways that things move around in this journey. I think like, even just talking about the music video for the song is a great visual example of what we've been talking about, in the way that these two samurais are fighting, and there's moments where one is like almost in defeat but not, and there's reborn, and there's these moments of low points in that battle between the two zombie samurais, which that should be a movie. Why hasn't anyone made a movie about zombie samurais yet?
Someone has to have made a movie about zombie samurais. There's no way someone in the 80s wasn't like, this needs to be a thing.
Here's the problem. If they did, we would have written a song about it by now.
That's a fair argument.
We'll come back to this.
Don't tell Michael. Yeah, it just the video does such a great job at visually representing what we've been talking about the whole time, of like this idea of the journey and the peaks and valleys, and where there's low periods, and finally at the very end when this battle is over, that is that rest period as everything just dwindles off into the distance. which
And it's like the video it's clearly it was designed. Some thought went into designing the whole package,
yeah.
which I really appreciate because a lot of the time music videos are like, "What should we do for promotion?" I don't know.
Well, it's things like that, or like the way a music video can help tell the story of a song is very underappreciated, I think.
Mhm.
Like you look at I don't want to bring up the stereotype, but you look at like every metalcore and post-hardcore band in the 2000s where all their videos are shot in a warehouse, but it's raining in the warehouse,
Yes.
and you're kind of like, I'm supposed to feel sad. But then you realize, how is it raining in a warehouse?
Tell me you're a post-hardcore or metalcore band in the early 2000s without telling me you're an early metalcore band in the early 2000s.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. Like that's like the telltale sign that you were a metalcore band in the early 2000s. And some, a lot of bands that take the time. And here's the thing, like budgeting for a video like that, like what Tesseract pulled off, probably a huge budget. Like that's a lot of
That ain't cheap.
ching. That ain't cheap, right? So to have that artistic idea and to find a way to bring it to life is so. I don't want to say difficult. It's definitely not as easy to do.
I agree, and I
You
think
need a whole crew of mocap actors, of people who know how to do 3D animation, of
absolutely,
people,
yeah.
video editors, of cameramen.
Oh,
Yeah.
for a
Brendan.
video like that, for a video like that, you definitely need a money cannon of some kind to like just throw large sums of money at people. And I think ultimately, like, it's also very easy for us on like one side of this to be like, stupid warehouse. But at the other end of it is like, they're like, how old and how much money did they have while recording this and probably borrowed equipment?
Yeah, exactly.
And like,
Yeah, and they needed a video to put up on wherever they were going to put it up on, so people would listen to their song. Yeah.
Well, I mean, back then in the 2000s, right? MTV was still, showing music videos.
wow, that's bonkers when you really look.
Yeah.
Like, I remember when MTV was all about the M.
Yep. And who could forget famously in 1999 when they showed the music video for "Rollin'" by Limp Bizkit? Anyway.
All right, let's wrap this up. Do we have any final thoughts?
I'll go first, I guess. My final thought is there's a lot of time and dedication that goes into music like this, and like, on what Brendan had said earlier in regards to this being like a tapestry, like it's still art. There's all these layers that go into it, and we're not just talking about I'm not just talking about the song at this point. I'm talking about everything as a whole. There are layers to the compositional aspect of the song. There are layers to the video. There's layers to the fact that they have a fucking VR game for this. A lot of this is incredibly hard work on a band to do financially, and the fact that Tesseract's been able to do this has been incredible. And it shows that we can do stuff like this. You just gotta actually do the work, which I think a lot of musicians don't like doing as much. You gotta do the work. You gotta just put everything in there. You gotta get your hands dirty, and you just gotta go. If you want your artistic expression and values to be shown to the world, do what you need to do to get it out there. And Tesseract's done a brilliant job with War of Being.
Yeah. I would say if you want to learn how to structure a song, like study Tesseract. Don't just listen to it. Like if you are a musician and you want to learn how to do that, learn some of their songs and really think about how they put everything together. You will. I know my brain kind of exploded when I first started doing that. I highly recommend having that experience.
Nope.
Brendan.
Yes, I think my takeaway, my conclusion here is that, especially as like a guy who almost predominantly like invests into like just metal, I think being open to just experiencing a song for what it is and being allowing yourself to like kind of go outside of like, I don't want to use the word gatekeeping with it. I just want to think that I definitely can see, especially moving forward, that there will be more open point or more modern prog that isn't what I in my comfort zone. And I think that, and in general, you have to really look in music in general with this, that you never really should rest upon the laurels of your comfort zone, especially when pushing the boundaries of it. Like if you're really trying to learn, like you said, to make something that makes sense and flows into an idea that you have in your mind and execute it in reality, you have to be able to push your boundaries of what your comfort is with things. And yeah, that's kind of all I kind of got with it.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we got a couple of things to plug.
Yes, we do.
So let's go. I can be found on all of the social medias at 8 String Alchemy, at least the ones I don't think suck. My music is available under my name, Manuel Barbara. Yusuf.
Hi. You can find this and anything else on my YouTube channel under Yusuf Rashid or Rashid. I actually can't remember which one it's under at this point. Anyway.
I think it's Rashid.
I think so. I don't know anymore. Socials, same thing. Yusuf Rashid, all that crap. Manuel and I are in a band that you should go check out.
In a famous Canadian power trio. No, it's not a Canadian power trio.
We're in
It's a
Rush?
death metal band.
Oh.
Yeah, it's called Necronomicon Ex Mortis. We've got music coming out almost constantly because the other guy we do it with is a crazy person.
We have 2 EPs. We have 2 EPs out right now. Our first self-titled, which came out in September of last year, and then our second EP, which came out in May of this year, May or August, sometime in the summer this year. Our second EP came out, and we are currently in the midst of working on a full-length album that I'm glad we're done recording.
That destroyed us both physically and mentally.
Yeah, so you can check us out on Instagram and on YouTube under Necronomicon Ex Mortis. We're on Bandcamp. We have merchandise too. Has nothing to do with this podcast, but there's merchandise too. And yeah, that's all my plugs, I think.
And then I think Brendan is also here.
I
Brandon,
might be.
Thank you for being here.
Well, this is kind of like my return to doing creative things since graduating from when I was in Seton Hall. My only plug is I did WSOU when I was in college, and now I'm going back into the making things category, and this is my triumphant return, if you will.
Wow.
Fantastic.
I'm glad we could be part of your return.
We've got a whole bunch of...
Cool.
Oh, we will.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. There's
so we've got
Manuel and I want to talk about.
Yeah, we definitely want to talk about some interval stuff. We want to talk about the new
new monuments,
Earthside, the new Earthside that came out after I don't know how many years of not a word from them, and it's incredible. And there will be more.
There's plenty of stuff, but until then, this has been the Progcast. My name is Yusuf.
I'm Brendan still.
I have been Manuel.
And we will see you soon. Thank you all, and goodbye. Now,
jazz hands.
Jazz hands.
Jazz. You can't
okay, now, no one stop recording for 1 second. We're all going to clap so I can have an end sync point. All right? If you don't, I will kill you. I will eat you. All right, ready? 1, 2, 3. Good enough.
What?
Okay, I'm going to stop recording.